welcome back. Last week, I cut off on the glycemic response eye-opener chart. We were discussing the impact of high glycemic foods on your body and charting the response of high glycemic foods, showing you how they go up quickly, hit your bloodstream, drive your insulin into a spike, and at the same time, that spike causes the body to turn on what I call the fat factory, or your body's fat producing capabilities, which are quite good, but it turns on the maximum weight gain switch. You gain some weight a lot of times, but when your insulin spikes, you really produce the weight gain, because insulin tells your body to go to making fat and storing it across your body in all the places you don't want it. Before we get into this, let me give a disclaimer. Number one, this is not meant for medical advice or instructing you, especially diabetics. Everybody go by your doctor's instructions, but it's to give you information on the foods and what we say while we're cooking the foods on the channel, so you can follow along and understand it. When we first went to cooking this way, we didn't understand it either. So I went to doing some research. First thing we did was we got us a glycemic load counter, which tells you what the glycemic foods are. And this is one that you can order online. I got them used and they're very cheap. This is a glycemic index diet book where I get a lot of this information also. In fact, it's got a chart that's very similar to the one that you see on the board. And it's talking about the same things I'm talking about. And then why we get sick. This is the one I always want you to go to. It's the latest, best research I can find explaining in layman's terms how glycemic foods affect your body and can either make you sick, or the proper management of it can help you get well. Now here's the chart that's on the board in the book, so that you'll see it's on page 152. And it's a chart that talks about how your body handles fat, how your body handles protein, and how it handles carbs, high glycemic carbs especially, which is what I've got charted right now. And here's a glycemic load diet cookbook that you can also get, and it goes into the same things. So I'm referencing the information from medical science, but I'm not proposing that this is medical advice or medical science. It's a visualization that I'm making for you so you can, I hope, easily understand it. So what happens when you eat some high glycemic food? Well, time is a factor. So we got 1 hour, 2 hours, 3, 4, 5, and insulin is a factor. So we're measuring insulin response up vertically, and horizontally we're measuring time. Let's look at fats first for a second. There's no response to insulin. So it's just basically going along level, because fats don't really drive a response to your insulin. Don't spike it. Now then, protein. A lot of times people are eating lots of high glycemic foods will also get a little bit of response from protein, because the body can readily convert protein into glucose, which would then give you a response. But fats and protein, basically you don't have to worry about. They're in the low glycemic load area of the chart. This is the high glycemic area of the chart. And up in this area, your insulin spikes in response to the food that you have now put in it, and it's exploding into your small intestines. And also at the same time your insulin spikes, your maximum weight gain switch is turned on. You can gain weight at other times, but if you want the maximum, It's when you eat high glycemic load foods. And so I drew a chart a little era called the rocket era. The high glycemic index actually measures how fast this rocket goes up, because high glycemic foods go up instead of out and across. Low glycemic foods sort of go in this way, and you're still getting some response, but it's not as low as protein and fats. And most all the food in the world now is in the low glycemic area of this chart. So there are a few up here, but many people eat a lot of them over and over again, like potatoes and pasta and sugary drinks and sugar. All right, but let's take a look at say you eat a bunch of potatoes and some cake and pasta. All right, this is going to shoot your insulin up in about 30 minutes. It's going to hit your small intestines. The first 2 feet of your small intestines is where your fast carbs, these on this line, are digested, and they go right into your bloodstream as soon as you eat it. And if you don't get some insulin, it goes up here and explodes. They're releasing all along here, but just for visualization, as it gets up in here, you get this overwhelming amount of sugar in your bloodstream, and then it comes up and starts to tail off. But this is where your high glycemic load carbs first are released, and they're released in the small intestines, the first 2 feet of the small intestines. Then there's medium glycemic load, which is digested in the rest of the small intestines, the remaining feet. And as you see, this starts after it initially explodes into the first 2 feet. These other carbs, which takes longer to digest, begin to tail out, and at some angle it begins to go down into the low glycemic load area, and your insulin begins to back off. If this happened this way, just one time, you had an insulin response and it calmed down, this wouldn't be so damaging, because the human body is made to respond to the carbs in this way. But here's what so often happens, because high glycemic foods cause your appetite to call for more. It's a negative loop. High glycemic foods send your spike up, but as it drops back down below the insulin level, it goes to screaming right here, because it triggers a hunger response in the average person. And they're not hungry, but because this is dropping fast like this, or dropping down, it triggers a hunger response. So this is about 2 hours, between 2 and 3 hours. You're in the kitchen looking for some chips. You're looking for some Rice Krispie treats, some chocolate chip cookies, a sweet drink, because your body's telling you need that. Now, that would be all right if you could just eat one of those and go on. But what happens on this high glycemic rocket chart right here, it comes to this point and your body says, I need some more. I need some more. So you go to the kitchen and get some more, and what does that do? It doesn't have to start all the way down here. It starts immediately back up. And again, you get this explosion. Again, you got an insulin response. Again, you go to maximum weight gain, even though you didn't eat but just a little old pack of stuff, whatever it was, but it's high glycemic. It instantly charges your bloodstream. So now the same cycle repeats again. Gradually, it turns and starts down depending on how much you eat and what you ate. The funny thing about it is, remember what happens when it crosses right here? What happened here? What happened here? At 3.5 hours, or at some point, maybe 4 hours, but you are craving more potato chips, some popcorn, a bar of candy, something high glycemic, sweet drink, juice, okay? So now what does this do to you? And this is what I call the negative cycle of weight gain and glycemic insulin spikes. So now you go in the kitchen and you get another one. Here you go. Back up again. Explodes again. Insulin goes up again. Weight goes. Now there are people who never come out of this. They do this all day long because this hunger is driving them. And at night, the last thing they do before they go to bed, sometimes they even get up in the middle of the night, they get them another snack. And it's not that you're eating barrels full of food, you're eating high glycemic foods, and they're doing this to you when if you were eating down in these areas here, the low glycemic load foods, this would not be happening to you. So now, down again and up again. So you get the picture. I call it a saw chart. It's a habitual saw. You're just driving your insulin crazy. You're wearing out your pancreas that produces insulin. You're driving what is called as insulin resistance, which is the state before you get to pre-diabetics usually. And then from pre-diabetics, you go into type 2. And that's the way this cycle raises your weight and breaks your pancreas down and causes heart problems, digestive problems like Rose had. All these come from the very, now some people are really hard addicted to this. And like I said, some people hard to come out of this cycle in a 24-hour period. Others go in and out of it. You know what your patterns are. Some stay in it all day at work, you know, just nibbling and eating. But this is a very negative cycle. It's about as bad as it gets. And so your low glycemic load cuisine is an attempt to provide you with all kinds of foods, seasoned all kinds of ways. And though they may not always meet a strict diet like keto or carnivore, they help the general population and anybody who is not on a glycemic load or a glycemic index diet or keto diet. You're not in those ketogenic diets. This is a good way to start. In fact, one of our listeners wrote to me and said, you know, there's a variation, large variation in the way people respond to this, and there is. You have to do your own measuring to see how you have to adjust recipes. Some people can't eat as much of a low carb load food, even though it's low carb, because their body reacts more harshly to carbs, even low carbs, than the next person's. So you have to watch your own diet, adjust the cuisine that Rose is cooking for yourself, especially if you're a diabetic. You need to sample, measure on the same food, get 5 or 6 readings, and then you'll know, hey, I can eat this dish at this quantity, either a half a cup or a full cup, and I can enjoy this food. It takes time to build your own low cuisine, as Rose has done, but she's given you the basis of that in all of these recipes. Most all of her recipes are low glycemic load. So this is where I'll stop for today, because I've sort of finished the most negative part of the high glycemic chart cycle and how damaging it can be. And I know you've got the grasp of what I'm talking about because you've lived it yourself to some degree. And we've talked about fats not being involved. We've talked about proteins not really being involved in spiking. So we'll talk a little more about low glycemic foods on the next video. So until then, God bless you.